Lost Zone decks are stupid, broken, and today's video is going to show exactly why. Hey, Nick from Card TCG, and today we're going to be looking at another Lost Zone. We haven't actually looked at a Lost Zone deck in quite a while, and I'm a little excited for this one because it's very... most Lost Zone decks are Sableye, Comfey, Cramorant, and all that. We're looking at a deck list from Mysterious Player. Who is the Mysterious Player? Find out next time. We've actually featured a deck from Mysterious Player in the past. I think it also was a Lost Zone deck with Arceus, and now it's a Lost Zone deck with Regigigas VSTAR, something I've not seen anybody use ever. So they came in 7th at the Tournament of Doom that happened recently, so congratulations to them. 7th is pretty good, top cut, especially when you're using Regigigas. So the way we're going to do this, we're going to go look at the deck profile in Pokegear, because I think it's a great website to actually look at a deck profile, and then we're going to take a look at the deck list that Mysterious Player played against, because I think it's important to understand that did they just get lucky, or is there something to this? So let's get right to it. So this is a Lost Zone deck. It's pretty standard, and we're gonna start off talking about Comfey. If you don't know what a Lost Zone deck is, I will go over it very briefly. You have cards like Comfey, has the flower selecting ability. Once during your turn, this Pokemon is in the active spot. Look at the top 2 cards of your deck. Put one of them into your hand, one goes into the Lost Zone. What is the Lost Zone? Basically, it is a banished, it's an exile part of the game field, that once a card goes to the Lost Zone, you can never play it or never use it for the rest of the game. It's gone forever. And why on earth would we want to get rid of our own cards like that? It's because some other cards have effects and abilities that they come into effect when we get more cards in the Lost Zone. So for example, we have Cramorant with the Lost Provisions ability. If you have 4 or more cards in the Lost Zone, you can attack for free with Cramorant, which is pretty cool. So we can use something like Comfey to get cards into the Lost Zone. We also have, get out of here, we also have Chorus's Experiment. Look at the top 5 cards of our deck. 3 go into our hand, 2 go into the Lost Zone. So that means if we go second, it's our first turn going second, all we have to do is get 2 Comfeys into play and a Chorus, and that's not that hard to do. We use both Comfey abilities, we play Chorus, and now all of a sudden we have 4 in the Lost Zone, and we can attack for free with Cramorant, hit for 110, which is really good. It's a good amount of damage. We're 2-shotting Pokemon V, 2-shotting basic Pokemon EXs. We're going to be 1-shotting most single prize Pokemon that are going to be in play that early, so opposing Sableyes, Comfeys, Cramorants, Ralts, Curlias, things like that. So that's really cool. Now, the way we actually get those cards into the Lost Zone, like I said, is Comfey, Chorus, but we also have things like Escape Rope and Switch so that we can move our Pokemon around. Remember, we want to be able to utilize multiple Comfey abilities each turn, so we rely pretty heavily on Switch cards and Escape Rope to go ahead and do that. We also have some other means of egress out of the active. We can move out of the active a little easier by attaching a card and retreating, right? We can attach an energy and retreat, but you can only do that once per turn. And then we also have Jet Energy. Jet Energy is a card from Paldea Evolve, so it's a pretty new card that we can, when we attach it from our hand to a card on the bench, we can now get to move the card that the Pokemon we attach it to the active, which is really, really good. And we have the Stadium Beach Core, that the retreat cost of each basic Pokemon, both yours and your opponent, is 1 less. So we don't even need to attach an energy to the Comfey to retreat if Beach Core is in play. So that's how we can go ahead, find our cards. We really want to utilize Comfey. We can use Radiant Greninja's concealed cards to discard a card from our hand, and then we discard an energy card from our hand specifically, any energy we want, and then we draw 2 cards. So between the Comfeys and the Radiant Greninja, we also have a couple of Pokegears to help us look at the top 7 cards of our deck, take a support of that and put it into our hand. So we dig through the deck, we draw cards with Comfeys, we draw cards with Greninjas, we play Pokegear. Odds are we're going to go ahead and find a Chorus. And once we do, now it's game on, right? We got a bunch of cards into the Lost Zone already. So how many cards do we really want to get in the Lost Zone? Well, there are 3 big milestones. The answer is 4 for the Cramorant we talked about. Then we have the milestone of 7 with Mirage Gate. If we have 7 or more cards in the Lost Zone, we can play this card. And then we search our deck for 2 basic energies of different types and attach them to our Pokemon in any way we want. That is incredibly good energy acceleration. It's really, really strong. It's going to help us set up a Radiant Greninja so we can go ahead and use its attack, Moonlight Shuriken, discard 2 energy from this Pokemon, and it does 90 damage to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon. Really good for crumbling opposing like Lost Zone engines, Curlias, Ralts. It's good for putting good pressure onto Pokemon. Maybe your Pokemon was hit into and ran to the bench. Now we can go ahead and Moonlight Shuriken and snipe it from the bench, which is really cool. It allows us to attach an energy to a Comfey or a Cramorant for retreat cost, and then attach an energy to Sableye so we can use Lost Mine, which is really what this deck wants to do. When we have 10 cards in the Lost Zone, that's our 3rd milestone, 4, 7, 10. We can use Lost Mine for a single Psychic Energy, and we place 12 damage counters on our opponent's Pokemon in any way we want. Extremely powerful ability because we have Manaphy, which prevents all damage done to your bench Pokemon from Pokemon attacks. So Radiant Greninja can't use Moonlight Shuriken onto bench Pokemon if Manaphy's in play. I mean, you can, but it won't do any damage. However, Manaphy doesn't protect against placing damage counters. There's a difference between doing damage and placing damage counters, and Manaphy only protects against doing damage. So you can go ahead and use Sableye's Lost Mine to your heart's content once you get 10 cards into the Lost Zone. But now, what about the Regigigas? Well, Regigigas V, 240 health is quite formidable, especially against single prize Pokemon that don't generally do a ton of damage. Hammer in for 2 colorless energies, 50, it's not really that impressive, but Angry Whack, 100 damage for 3 colorless, and it does 10 more for each damage counter on this Pokemon, and now this Pokemon is now confused. We don't really care about the confusion too much because of the jet energies, all the switch and escape probes, we can evolve it. Once the Pokemon that's in the active or has any special condition, when it moves to the bench or evolves, it recovers from that special condition. So we can very easily get Regigigas from the active to the bench, not really that big a deal, or we can evolve it. When we evolve it, it goes to Regigigas VSTAR, 300 health. It's a normal type, so it's weak to fighting, and has a retreat cost of 4. Again, we don't really care about the retreat cost because we have Switch, Escape Rope, and the Jet Energy. Giga Impact is our attack for 3 colorless energies, 230 damage, which is pretty good. We're going to be one-shotting basic Pokemon Vs, basic Pokemon EXs. If we put any damage from a Cramorant or Sableye, Moonlight Shuriken onto a Pokemon, Giga Impact is probably going to be able to pick up the KO. But during your next turn, this Pokemon can't attack. Now we can avoid this. We can get around that negative side effect of the attack by, once we use the Regigigas attack, it can't attack the next turn. But when we go to the bench and then bring it back through ways of like escape rope, switch, jet energies, things like that, now the effect resets and we can attack, which is pretty decent for, using those attacks. We also have a 2-2 line, which means we can have a Regigigas VSTAR in the active and a Regigigas V on the bench. We use something like Giga Impact. Now we do 230 damage. We can't attack during our next turn. Our opponent hits into us. 300 health is kind of a lot. It might be a little hard for some decks to KO us in one hit, which means we can go ahead and use Sharon's Care. Put one of your colorless Pokemon that has any damage counters on it and all cards attached to it in your hand. So now we have this Regigigas VSTAR that gets damaged, it's in the active. We go ahead, play Sharon's Care, pick it up with all the energies that it's attached to it. We can now promote the Regigigas V that was on the bench to the active, evolve because we have the Regigigas VSTAR in hand, attach an energy for turn, and then there we go. Now we're attacking again. We just, not only did we recycle the attack, but we recycled the energies and we've denied our opponent prizes. If they were looking to take a 2-shot, now they're not going to be able to do it. Now it's going to be 3-shot, and we're still progressing our board, dealing lots of damage in the process. So really, really cool. If we do need to recover stuff, we have a bunch of recovery between things like Clara, which lets us get up to 2 Pokemon and or 2 basic energies from our discard. We have Super Rod to shuffle 3 energies or 3 Pokemon, 3 in any combination of Pokemon or basic energies from our discard pile into our deck. This is really good so we can reuse Mirage Gate. We also have Energy Recycle, shuffle up to 5 basic energy cards from your discard into your deck again. We really want to be able to ensure that we can attach energies from the deck with Mirage Gate, that we have energies to attack. We have an attack cost of 3, attack cost of 3, attack cost of 1, retreat cost of 1, attack cost of 0, but a retreat cost of 1. Like, we need energies for things. Plus, getting those energies into the deck means we can draw them, so we can go ahead and discard with Radiant Greninja to draw more cards. The more cards we draw, the better chances we have at winning. We also have a little bit of draw support in the form of Roxanne. We can only use this card if our opponent has 3 prizes remaining or less, but each player shuffles their hand into their deck. You draw 6, your opponent only draws 2, so it's a kind of cool way to try to shut them out of the game at the end. We talked about Corvus already, we talked about Pokegear. To find those supporters, we do have a copy of Boss's Orders. There's something on our opponent's bench that we want to attack, or we want to try to trap in the active. We use Boss's Orders to do that. We have a few mobility options in terms of Switch, Escape Rope, Jet Energy we talked about. Ultra Ball, Nest Ball, and Battle VIP Pass are our Pokemon search. And our last bit of recovery is Hal Pad to help us get 2 supporters from our discard back into our deck. That means we can go ahead and reuse Boss's Orders, reuse Sharon's Care, reuse Roxanne, something like that. We can go ahead and put them from our... We can really deny a lot of prizes by using Sharon's Care, Pal Pad, Sharon's Care again, and now heal our Pokemon. But something we haven't really talked about, we have 4 Psychic, 5 Water Energies. We have a V-Guard energy. That means this Regigigas VSTAR has effectively 330 health when taking damage from your opponent's Pokemon V. It's kind of important to know. That means like Tyranitar is going to have a really difficult time KOing it. Lugia is not going to be able to KO it. It's going to make it a little bit harder for something like Zacian V to KO it. Some things like Chien-Pao don't really care. Gardevoir, like the Shining Arcana Gardevoir doesn't really care. They're not Pokemon V, so they're not affected by V-Guard, but still can make a difference. Now, we didn't talk about the VSTAR power for Regigigas, and I wanted to save it for last because it's super interesting and something we don't see very often. It is the Star Guardian. During your turn, if your opponent has exactly 1 prize remaining, you can choose one of your opponent's benched Pokemon. They then discard that Pokemon and all cards attached to it, which is insane. I'm so curious to know if Mysterious Player utilized this ability and how effective it was, because it seems like it could be really cool. Remember, this is an ability, and it doesn't prevent us from attacking. It doesn't end our turn. So that means if our opponent has 2 Pokemon in play, let's just pretend, we'll make up a scenario. Our opponent has 2 Pokemon in play. One's in the active, one's in the bench. We use Star Guardian to just flat out discard that bench Pokemon. We don't take any prizes, but in a situation like this where if we are attacking into our opponent's, say, Pokemon V, something that has 230 health remaining or less, now we discard their 1 bench Pokemon and we attack for KO. Sure, even if we only took 2 prizes, let's say we're playing against another Lost Zone deck, we get rid of the only 2 Comfeys. Yeah, we took 2. We don't even take 2 prizes. We take 1 for the KO, but they have no more Pokemon in play, and then they just lose. So we can win the game like that, which is really, really interesting. That would be so funny to me. There's also other uses of things like this. Maybe there's a Duraludon Vmax into play that we can't attack because we have a Jet Energy attached or we have a V-Guard Energy attached. We're not allowed to deal damage to a Duraludon Vmax because we have a special energy. Well, we just say, you know what? We're going to play Escape Rope, and now we're going to put that Duraludon Vmax that was in the active onto the bench, or we'll play Boss's Orders to pull up an Arceus VSTAR or an Arceus V or an Umbreon V or something like that. Now we use Star Guardian to discard the Duraludon Vmax and the energies that it likely has attached to it, and now we can start attacking something else like it. Like I said, Umbreon, Arceus, Flying Pikachu, whatever it is. That's really, really powerful. Our opponent only has 1 Baxcalibur into play, or we Boss's Orders, 1 Baxcalibur. Now we have a Baxcalibur in the active, and we can go ahead and Star Guardian, get rid of the 2nd Baxcalibur, attack, and now we take a prize. Both Baxcaliburs are gone. How does your opponent play the game after that? How do they play the game? They can't. They're never going to do enough damage to deal with them, especially if they're playing the Arceus build. A lot of Chien-Pao is moving more towards Arceus. You see some Palkia still, but if they're playing the Arceus build and you boss's orders, they're one, if the boss's orders, they're one Excalibur and KO, it doesn't matter. But if they have 2 in play, your boss's orders 1, Star Guardian, the bench 1, attack the active. That's it, they're done. They might as well just scoop. There's no way they're going to be able to recover from that, especially because you hit for 230, and that means even next turn you hit their Chien-Pao, you're going to be taking a 1-shot unless they put like a Bravery Charm or something. So that's really, really cool. I think this is so fantastic. I really hope, I hope it's something that doesn't take off a little bit more. I play Single Strike Lugia, and I've gone back to putting a 2/2 line of Urshifu V and Vmax in my Lugia deck. So if I do encounter something like a Regigigas, if I can just hit it with Impact Blow, I'm fine because it is weak to fighting. So I'll do way more than enough damage to KO that thing. But even in between the 230, like I said, we still have the 110. That's 340. That's enough to knock out pretty much every single Pokemon in the game. We have the Sableye to just go ahead and spread damage. We got the Radiant Grid. This is actually kind of cool, and I really do hope that it's something we can kind of see a little bit more. It's a little different than your standard Dragonite, Skyseal Stone, Lost Zone list, or your Dragonite, Raikou, Drapion, Lost Zone, Forest Seal Stone build. And I want to show the matchups. I just want to show you that this wasn't just they got super lucky and played weird decks or whatever. Let's take a look at this real quick. So this is the Limitless page for Mysterious Players' most recent tournament performance at the Tournament of Doom, the deck we've been talking about. And just to prove that it's the deck we're talking about, not something else, here's the deck list. You can see the Regigigas V and VSTAR, and we'll go back to matches. So now you know for certain that I am not making this up, even though I kind of wish I was. Round 1, they played against the Lost Tina, and they won. Now, do keep in mind who their opponent is. They did lose to that opponent in round 9 later, so maybe it's a pretty split matchup. Maybe our opponent, the Jam 0828 bricked game the first time they played. I don't really know, but they go on to play another Lost Zone Sableye deck. I don't know exactly what kind of Lost Zone deck is. This the Dragonite Stones, whatever. They beat that. They lose to an Arctina. Maybe they just got. Maybe they bricked. Maybe this kind of seems like the thing that might be able to brick is you start a Regigigas and like 4 Mirage Gates and you're just done. There's nothing you can do about it. They did beat another Lost Zone Tina. They beat a Palkia. They beat a Lugia. They beat an Umbreon. They did tie against the Mew. I don't know if that was an ID or not. This doesn't really seem like the deck that would tie a Mew, but maybe they just took the ID to get in the top cut, and then they did lose in the top cut to that same Lost Zone Tina that they beat in round 1. So really, really interesting deck, and they, like I said, they beat some very top decks. This player went 8-3, 7-3. These are not nothing lists, right? These are not nothing players where it's like, oh, they went 0-4 drop in every single tournament and they got an easy win. No, 8-3, 7-3, like that's pretty decent, right? So, and these are really good meta decks. I'm curious. I wish I knew how it would do against Mew, but beating Lost Zone Tina, beating Palkia Chien-Pao most likely, beating Single Strike Lugia, beating Arceus Umbreon. You beat the Lost Zone Tina, you beat a regular Lost. Those are the top meta decks at the moment. The only thing that they didn't play is Gardevoir, really. And that, I guess that would be interesting to see how it does against Gardevoir. But otherwise, I don't know what more you would want from this. So there you go, this crazy Lost Zone Regigigas deck, something I never thought I would ever have to say. Is this something that you would try yourself? Are you excited to experiment a little bit more with Lost Zone decks, knowing that they can do well even in our current meta? Is the meta so boring or so flat that people are resorting to playing Regigigas VSTAR? I don't have the answers, but I want to hear from you what you think. So let me know in the comments about your thoughts of Lost Zone Regigigas. But that's going to do it for us today. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, found this informative. If you did, like, subscribe, comment, all that kind of stuff tells YouTube this is a good channel. Other people should watch it. And let me know what you want to see for next time. But that's going to do it. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time. I want to give a special shout out to the YouTube members Black Wins, Mike the Highest, Fernando Ortiz, Chin Pokemon, and Eric N. Thank you all so much for your support. It really means a lot to me. And if you want to become a channel member, you can go ahead and click the channel member button somewhere at the bottom of the page. I'm not really sure. I haven't done it myself.